Edgar Alvin Riehl was born November 16, 1920, in a modest farmhouse near the Twin Cities of Suisun, Fairfield, California, the middle child in a family that eventually had 7 children, 6 boys and 1 girl. Times were tough, but living on a farm, there was always plenty of food. Meat, eggs, and milk, and a large garden supplied the family. As soon as he was big enough, he was assigned chores. He attended a one-room school, all 8 grades in one room. He was 15 when he bagged his first steer with his dad. He enjoyed hunting for the next 60 years of his life. Annual camping and hunting trips with his family began his love of nature and the outdoors. In 1930, his family lost their farm. For the next 5 years, they farmed on rented properties. He learned about prayer from his cousin Bo. Once, during a visit, they prayed that Bo could stay an extra day. That was the first time he gave God credit for coming to his aid. In high school, a teacher asked him to take a nice girl to the dance. He told her he didn't know how to dance and he couldn't afford the tickets. She proceeded to take him into the storage room and taught him a couple of dance steps. After a few minutes, she said he was proficient and arrangements were made for the tickets. It turned out the nice girl was the principal's daughter. In 1936, he and his family moved into the ranch, a 179-acre place outside of Vacaville. While in high school, he played in the band. He started with tuba, then sousaphone, baritone, and finally he ended on the euphonium. He graduated from high school in 1938 and then worked on the farm until 1940 when he enlisted in the Army Air Corps. He went to Fort Douglas, Utah, his first trip out of California. After his basic training, he was assigned to the 88th Reconnaissance Squadron with his brother Marvin. An ill-performed tonsillectomy caused him serious health issues that landed him in Fitzsimmons Hospital in Denver for nearly 7 months. Upon recovering, he was assigned to Lowry Field. During the hospital stay, he decided he wanted to become an Army Air Corps pilot. On Memorial Day, he attended the parade in Denver and then went stag to Lakeside to a dance. It was here he met his dance partner for the next 73 years. In October, he went to pre-flight training in Montgomery. He began flight training in a fun airplane, the PT-17. He was introduced also to the BT-13. On June 30th, 1943, he officially became an officer. After graduation, he and his mother boarded a train to Denver so his mother could meet Ruth and her family. On July 7th, 1943, he and Ruth were married in Cheyenne, Wyoming, in a hastily arranged church wedding. That was followed by a steak dinner. Their wedding night was spent at the Shirley Savoy Hotel, and Edgar left the next afternoon for South Carolina to begin training on the B-25. During training, he sent for Ruth, but once he completed his training, he was headed for war, and she headed back to Denver. He served in New Guinea in the 38th Bomb Group in the 822nd Squadron. In his tour of duty, he flew 55 missions. He made it home for Christmas in 1944, and he had a 1-month leave. His next assignment was in Albany, Georgia, and he and Ruth drove across the southern United States. He was assigned as a B-25 flight instructor. From there, he was transferred to Chandler, Arizona for a very short while. He was released from duty October 2nd, 1945. Before settling into a civilian job, he and Ruth had a quick hunting trip, and he got a buck. He was hired as an accountant for the IRS. His supervisor wisely knew that he wanted to be a pilot, and fortunately, she had a contact at the personnel office at United Airlines. She put in a good word, and after using his GI Bill money to secure his instrument rating, he was hired by United on April 12, 1946. He started in the DC-3 and was assigned to Denver West domicile. In 1947, he upgraded to the DC-4. Then, in 1948, he was furloughed. At that time, he applied for recall into the service. The Air Force recalled him for 3 years, and he was assigned to Europe and was sent to Fossberg, where he became a pilot in the Berlin Airlift. Due to his DC-4 experience, he went right into flying, and most days he flew 3-round trips, carrying in coal for heat. When he returned to the United States, he was assigned to Enid, Oklahoma. He and Ruth took a quick fishing trip to Taylor Park before heading to Enid. He was assigned to a B-25 unit. Enid did not have a lot of diversions, and lo and behold, Ruth became pregnant, and they welcomed Janet into the family on October 10, 1950. During his flying at Vance Air Force Base, he logged his 4,000th hour and was presented his senior pilot wings. When Janet was 4 months old, they were transferred to Scott Air Force Base near Belleville, Illinois. They made good friends, and he flew C-47s, B-25s, B-26s, and C-54s at that base. While he was there, he was promoted to captain. Less than a month later, he was back at United and flying the Convair 340. He soon upgraded to the DC-6 and then the DC-7. By 1958, he was promoted to captain and flew a JFK charter. That is John F. Kennedy, not the airport JFK. And then a Lawrence Welk charter. During this trip with Lawrence Welk's band, he became acquainted with the Lennon sisters, and their friendship lasted for the rest of his life. On April 21, 1959, his second daughter, Joyce, was born, and with the jet age, he became a first officer in the DC-8 aircraft. Early in 1960, Ruth was once again with child, so they decided to move to Boulder. In September, they moved into the house at 446 Teresa Drive, and they ended up living there for 54 years. Jean was born on December 11, 1960. In January of 1961, a church leader looked out the front window of the house and pointed and said, "We need to start a church there." So in 1963, the church began, and Ruth and Edgar were founding members. Around that same time, Janet joined 4-H, and Edgar and Ruth quickly became involved as 4-H leaders. Edgar stayed engaged with his flying by serving as captain on the new aircraft in the United Fleet, the 727 and the DC-8. He often remarked he couldn't believe he was getting paid to do something he enjoyed so much. Edgar loved spending time with his children. Fishing and camping, he taught them to value the earth and to tread lightly. He valued education and encouraged a love of music and a respect for individual talents and interests. Laughter and love were plentiful and shared with friends, family, and strangers who passed through his life. A random phone call in 1968 changed Edgar's and Ruth's lives forever, as they were asked to provide a few days of housing for a mission doctor and his family from India. This amazing visit led to lifelong friendships and a partnership in serving poor communities in India. Through the 1960s, most vacations were taken by road with a travel trailer. The family visited most of the United States, and it was great fun to pull out the maps and plan the routes. In the 1970s, Edgar upgraded to the DC-10. This was by far his favorite aircraft to fly. He did upgrade one more time and retired in 1980 as a 747 captain with United with 34 years of service. After Ed's retirement, he and Ruth did mission work at Coco Kahi Hunger Project. He and Ruth became Braille transcribers and took their equipment on their driving trips. They found that they loved Fort Myers, Florida, and wintered there for the next 25 years. They also took extended trips to Australia, New Zealand, and Europe, and had some amazing cruises to the South Pacific, the Panama Canal, and the fjords. Edgar was involved in his community throughout his adult life. In Florida, he and Ruth belonged to Sanibel United Church of Christ. He served as a groundskeeper and a parking attendant. He participated in Habitat for Humanity builds, ECHO, a hunger project, and the Crop Walk. He was an avid bicyclist and often led his neighborhood's Saturday rides for 20 miles or more. He was also active with UCC Broomfield, participating in the crop walk, keeping up with the grounds, and he also sold vegetables grown in his own garden, donating all of the proceeds to hunger missions. He was delighted when each of his grandchildren was born. He loved taking them places like the zoo, fishing, and camping. They adored him, and the feeling was mutual. Card games and word games were part of evenings spent together, and for dessert, ice cream was often served. He and Ruth attended concerts and graduations, and he always came with his camera to record the event. In 2013, he and Ruth moved to Balfour Assisted Living in Louisville. It did not take them long to become active members of the new community, building wonderful new friendships. He spoke at various events with his Berlin airlift and World War II stories, and he also wrote his life story. In 2015, Edgar piloted a souped-up PT-17 thanks to a program honoring World War II veterans. So what was first became last, and he savored the experience. Then on March 31st, 2016, as the pilots say, Ed flew west, in peace, surrounded by family.